Various liberals and progressives are not happy about the Trump town hall last night. That includes our friends over at MSNBC, who reacted thusly.
I can't believe I'm going to use catastrophizing language here, but it was disgraceful on every level. It showed. I wouldn't say it's dangerous for democracy because we passed that a long time ago. But it showed the corrosive effects of Trumpism over 8 years. And I've got to say, the most shocking part was an audience who cheered on a president who tried to overturn American democracy. An audience that mocked and ridiculed a woman who a jury of her peers, Donald Trump's peers, found had been sexually assaulted. Those Americans there last night turned that into a punchline, laughed and dismissed cops getting the kicked out of them on January the 6th, beaten up over and over again, calling a cop a thug who actually was trying to stop people from the House floor from being killed. I just could go on and on.
Who would ever think of calling cops thugs? It's almost as though there was a whole defund the police movement that was talking about police violence as a central tenet that was supposed to be a left priority here.
Trump was running to be the leader of Black Lives Matter.
Well, he wasn't alone. Of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez got in on the action as well. Let's take a look at that.
I think what we saw tonight is a continued demonstration of the sacrifice that women and survivors of sexual abuse across the country of all genders experience and the sacrifices that they make in order to come forward and challenge power. And what we also saw tonight was the consequence of doing that. They sacrificed their anonymity, they sacrificed their safety, and they sacrifice all of this because we continue to live in a society where an overwhelming amount of structures allow this abuse to happen and find it permissible. I know you said earlier that you will not comment on the platforming of such atrocious disinformation, but I would. I think it was a profoundly irresponsible decision. I don't think that I would be doing my job if I did not say that. And what we saw tonight was a series of extremely irresponsible decisions that put a sexual abuse victim at risk, that put that person at risk in front of a national audience, and I could not have disagreed with it more. It was shameful.
This is brain dead commentary. He is running to be president. You can't get around that fact. He's going to be interviewed. He's going to be questioned. Voters are going to hear from him. You can't stop that from happening. CNN has every right, and in fact, it's the responsible thing to do as a news organization to participate in that process. You can criticize the questions they asked. You can say they didn't handle it correctly. You can, and when we argued in the previous segment, we were talking about this. We had different views on how they approached it. It's all fine, all well and good. They argued, CNN had a conversation after, they had a panel of people to talk about how it went. But to say that the decision overall to have this happen in any form, which is essentially what AOC is saying there, and essentially what MSNBC was saying, in any form it was irresponsible. Because it's going to re-traumatize sexual abuse victims? Yeah. That was the angle AOC took there?
It almost seemed as though the proximity.
Does the town hall with Joe Biden traumatize sexual abuse victims?
Exactly. It almost feels like she's saying that proximity of the verdict in the civil trial coming out, the day before the town hall, or the day of, and now I can't even remember, of the town hall, makes it worse somehow when Donald Trump is someone, the Access Hollywood tape happened before the 2016 elections. He has had multiple sexual assault and rape allegations stemming back since long before he ever had a political career. That's an argument for never having done an interview with Trump when he was running for president, when he was an ex-president. It's an argument that just doesn't hold up. Now, again, you can make the case that they handled it poorly. There were many times during the debate where Trump would just flatly deny things that are in the factual record. And when this was happening back, I think in 2020, if I recall correctly, at a certain point at debates, they started bringing video and audio recordings so they can kind of play them as evidence and kind of impeach Trump in the moment when he tried to deny that he had said something or that someone else had said something. That, I think, would have been helpful. Maybe it was irresponsible of CNN to open up these topics, knowing what Trump has said about women, et cetera, in the past, and knowing that he was not going to be contrite and take a knee and have contrition. You can make those arguments. But the idea that platforming a former president in the United States is irresponsible because he's been accused of this thing, if anything, if the journalism was responsible, it was an opportunity to, have more accountability about those kinds of issues. That's not what happened. Democrats are clearly leaning into the sex abuse angle of this as one of the things that they think is the most scandalous thing, the most horrible thing about the event. The other one that they're focusing on is 1-6. You heard it from Joe Scarborough. How dare he say that he was going to pardon some of the people at the Capitol. I think that was such an interesting point because I see it online. A lot of people are framing it as Trump says he'll let Proud Boys out of prison. What's his face over at Crooked Media was saying that, Jon Favreau. But if you listen to it, people have to start putting themselves in the shoes of what a potential Trump supporter is actually going to hear. He was asked whether he would pardon some folks that were at the Capitol that day. He said, sure, some folks. Now, are we really going to sit here and now have like a 3-day media cycle where we argue that there was a whole range of culpability of people who were at the Capitol that day, and that to the audience's eye, plausibly, some of those people might have been caught up in a justice system that liberals have for years been arguing is in fact unfair and overly punitive? Is that really the position we want to take? Joe Scarborough is now taking the position that cops can never be thuggish in their behavior. Now, if you want to argue that Donald Trump specifically is going to release someone who is a white supremacist or someone who actually attacked the cop or broke the law in some way, then make that narrower point.
No, I actually thought releasing from prison was part of the MSNBC, CNN, cable news progressive agenda. Van Jones was one of the commentators last night. Wasn't he instrumental in helping get the First Step Act?
With Donald Trump.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Releasing people from prison was a good thing from the liberal democratic perspective, like 5 seconds ago.
Right, and it still is, but these points are all nuanced. It's not, I think that some leftists need to be more nuanced when they describe what they mean by prison reform. I think that's a perfectly fair critique. And about the validity of there being still some punitive system, even if we think it should look very different from what it looks like today. And what's happening here with Donald Trump. But speaking of that panel, how much did it resemble like a funeral dirge? It was the most depressing allotment of people. They cut away from the town hall and everyone was sitting there like they had been shell-shocked. Like they had just, seen some horrible tragedy unfold.
Well, it sounds like internally at CNN, people were not necessarily happy with this being done. So Chris Licht is apparently giving Kaitlan Collins I think the 9 p.m. hour slot. That was, I think that's the first time we're talking about this on the show. This was just news that broke yesterday, day before. Who knows? It all runs together.
It's a blur.
Recently, she's going to be an anchor. He seems very bullish on her chances. And there was a call today, their like morning call, where Chris Licht, head of CNN, was praising Kaitlan, saying she did a fantastic job. This is exactly what we should be doing. It was very to kind of, I think, tamped down internally even the frustration with how things went.
Yeah.
So
this is from New York Times reporting this morning. They say on a network-wide editorial call, he congratulated moderator Kaitlan Collins on a, quote, masterful performance before acknowledging the public backlash. Quote, we all know covering Donald Trump is messy and tricky, and it will continue to be messy and tricky, he said, but it's our job. I absolutely unequivocally believe America was served very well by what we did last night. People woke up and they know what the stakes are in this election in a way that they didn't the day before. And if someone was going to ask tough questions and have that messy conversation, it damn well should be on CNN.
Yeah.
What do you think?
After listening to the commentary from MSNBC and AOC, look, I would rather be, if I'm Chris Licht, I want to say, look, yeah, I'm the network that knows that Trump is a political force, that you can't wish him away. You can't put that genie back into a bottle and we're going to deal with him, rather than the network MSNBC that's going to just like cry about it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, I agree with the choice. I was someone who defended CNN's choice to do this.
Yeah.
I do have criticisms of the way that it was implemented from a journalistic perspective. You have to either have a host, and it's not an easy job. This is not me like piling on Kaitlan. It's difficult. But you have to have a sense of what your approach is going to be going into one of those situations when you know you're dealing with a hostile witness, as it were. You have to be prepared to, one, ask questions on behalf of his prospective voters, not on the behalf of MSNBC people who already are going to hate Donald Trump no matter what. You have to be prepared to use the fact that this is a town hall format and that there are people whose votes Trump needs in the audience to insulate your point and back them up and use them as leverage to get him to actually firmly answer a question. You have to be prepared with specific facts, citations, and evidence so that when he kind of, he was doing a lot of gosh galloping, I think it's called, where you just talk over the person and say so many different facts it's hard to respond to all of the different pieces of it. You have to have the ability to stop the conversation, control it, and to make him respond to specific pieces of evidence that contradict what he is saying. And none of that happened. And we've been talking about Donald Trump and talking to Donald Trump and interviewing Donald Trump now for years. And people setting this up and not being prepared is negligent.
Well, we're available. We could do it.
We could, and we would. I mean, I think I keep reflecting on the interview we did with Marjorie Taylor Greene, which I felt was really productive. I have completely, very little ideological overlap with her at all. But, you know, I've seen many interviews that people have done with her where the choice was made to try to own her and to get that clip, that like viral clip. And I think that a lot more is gained by asking people whether or not any politician is going to fulfill their obligation to the people that they say they're going to represent. That is fundamentally what viewers want to know. Not, is she going to agree with me, Briahna Joy Gray, who is not one of her voters, but is she going to actually follow up with the claims that she is making to her so-called constituents? And if Kaitlan Collins had taken that approach with Donald Trump and used the fact that this was a town hall and there were people in that room who sincerely want to believe in Donald Trump and what he's going to do for them as working class people from looking to a self-described populist.
Like when he starts talking about the Twitter files, if she knew more about the what Republican voters care about, she could have said, but why, if you're so mad about this, why didn't you do anything? All of these agencies that were doing these things, it was your agencies.
Right.
It was your government.
Right.
How can you be trusted to rein in the weaponization of the federal government when it all occurred under your watch?
100%.
How can you be trusted to enact an America First agenda when you put people like John Bolton in charge?
100%. Also, there was this really funny...
But they love John Bolton because he's an anti-Trumper, so that's never going to happen.
They do. There's also this really funny moment where he brought up the Twitter files, but then immediately said he doesn't like Twitter. He prefers to post on Truth Social. And there was this moment where you could anticipate, depending on what Tucker Carlson does with his relationship with Twitter, that there's this like division that happens where it's kind of Trumpism.
Trump doesn't love Elon Musk. That could have been interesting to see that get talked about. But again, these are divisions that you and I are aware of. Not so much the talking heads at CNN. But not a crime against democracy.
Not a crime against democracy.
How dare they platform him? Brain dead commentary from the folks at MSNBC. More Rising right after this.